welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Career Coffee Chat. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, helping driven, successful professionals remove career roadblocks and achieve more income, influence, and impact. And today, I'm very excited to talk to you about how to get real results with your resume. I think it's time to debunk some of those resume myths, don't you? Let's talk about what really works and answer some tough resume questions. So if you're just tuning in, please say hi, state your name, say where you're from. I'd love to hear from you. There is a lot of resume opinions out there, but not all of them are qualified, certified, or even researched, which does not help you, the hardworking job seeker, get real results and stand out in a very competitive job search market. So let's talk about how to get real results with your resume. But first, let's talk about how to debunk, or what are some of those resume myths that need to be debunked. And I'd love to hear from you as you're tuning in. What resume assumptions do you have when it comes to what it takes to be seen and stand out in a very competitive job search market? I'll give an example. One of the top questions I get is, how long should my resume be? Most people say 2 one-page resume. Okay, well, the problem with a 2 or 1 or worse one-page resume is that does not help you, the job seeker, stand out in a very competitive job search market. It is extremely difficult to demonstrate your career contributions and your expertise in a very, very tight amount of space. And you also don't want to cram your 2 or 1-page resume and be very word dense. It has to be readable and have some breathing room, as we like to say. So white space is good in your resume. You need to have it readable, and it needs to express your career contributions. It's very hard to do that with a 2 or 1-page resume. Now, we'll share with you that you can have a 2-page resume. There's nothing wrong with that, particularly if you're earlier on in your career. However, if you are an experienced professional and you can easily fill up a 3-page resume, feel free to create a full resume document. Now, if you feel compelled to have a 2-page resume, that's fine. Just know that that particular myth is being pushed by a lot of recruiters who don't want to read resumes. And quite frankly, they don't read resumes to begin with. So even if you have a 2-page resume, they're not going to read that either. So just keep that in mind, because a short resume will make it very challenging for you to get through the first stage gate of resume or your online application process. And that first stage gate is applicant tracking systems. So when you apply online, you will probably go through an applicant tracking system, and you'll know because you'll have to enter your password and create a username, all sorts of wonderful things like that. The problem with having a very short resume is it's difficult to make the job match criteria. Now, recruiters, well, ones that aren't experienced, don't always necessarily care about whether you get through an applicant tracking system. They just want to see what they want to see. So be cautious when you're taking advice from outside resources. Make sure that the advice you're receiving is qualified, certified, and researched. That's very important. And also, please don't assume. While there are many wonderful recruiters, and I'm connected to quite a few of them, they're great and outstanding recruiters, not all of them are very knowledgeable about the job search itself. So they're knowledgeable about their part of the job search, but they're not cognizant of the full spectrum of the job search, which you will have to go through. Also, keep in mind, HR professionals are great at talent acquisition, but they're not job search experts. So when you hear career or resume advice, just be very cautious about following that advice. Now, like I mentioned, you can have a 2-page resume. The challenge for you, the job seeker, is you will have to completely tailor that resume for every single application. That's a lot of time, quite frankly, because even if you don't do anything to your resume, it still takes about an hour and a half to apply for a job. I don't know who has a lot of time on their hands. If you just want to do that, that's great. When I work with my clients, we do create a 3-page resume. no more, but a 3-page resume. And I do coach and train them on how to optimize that resume for every application very quickly and easily, or they have the option of doing a 2-page resume. Just know that's going to take a lot more time. Now, what about a 1-page resume? If you just left college, good, have a 1-page resume, maybe that fits you, but don't feel like a 1-page resume is actually going to get you very far through the process, because we've talked about the first stage gate, which is applicant tracking systems, but what about the hiring manager? Okay, recruiters can probably see what they want to see very quickly, but the hiring manager really wants to see what's in it for them. If I'm onboarding you and I'm spending money on getting you in the organization, I want to know as a hiring manager that you have explicit career contribution examples in your resume that tells me you can deliver, right? So they want to know what their return on investment is. So let's talk about what else is a typical resume myth. Now, this is usually most common for those people who are fairly early in their career. But a lot of career coaches, career counselors in colleges tell budding young professionals that they should have this fancy, graphically pretty resume. Well, pretty resumes really don't necessarily get you hired, okay? So while the resume may look great, that doesn't necessarily mean it will get through applicant tracking systems, because if it has fancy fonts, graphics, tables, anything in text box, anything that's formatted heavily, it may not be read by some applicant tracking systems that use a parsing system. I don't want to bury you in technical speak, but there's basically 2 main types. There's optical scanners for your resume, or it parses your resume, it turns into plain text. For those fancy, graphically pretty resumes, parsing systems just simply can't read them, flat out. Now, for optical scanners, just note that if you use Times New Roman or any serif font, so anything with any fancy gobbledygook on your font, it may not be able to read that either. So I highly recommend you keep it simple. Arial or Calibri is a great font to use in your resume. Yes, font matters. I know, it's weird, but it does. Let's see, Amin says, I put my LinkedIn link on my resume in the header. Is that okay? Yes. Feel free to do that. Now, you don't have to put the whole URL in there. You can just put the // and your personal URL. That's perfectly fine. And you also don't have to make an active hyperlink. Some older systems, depending on who you're applying to, if they haven't updated the system, some hyperlinks give their applicant tracking system indigestion. So just keep that in mind. I wouldn't recommend having an active hyperlink in your resume, but you can certainly have the URL there. So hopefully that helps you. Let's see, should skills and programs be a separate section? Yes, so it should be separate than your work experience. So there's really several components that I recommend you have in your resume. One is a very, very short summary. Now, a lot of people spend a lot of time and have this big biography at the top of their page, and quite frankly, nobody reads that, okay? You should have a short summary. Think of it as a sales pitch. You are actively telling the hiring manager what you will deliver for that particular role. Now, it's probably something you do want to customize for each application. Then I recommend you have high-level, very important skills and expertise front and center on the first page of your resume somewhere. I also recommend that you pull out some select accomplishments based on the type of job you're applying for in a separate section. Then you can get into your education, work history, certifications, etc. But please do make every section very obvious and clearly delineated from another section. And you don't necessarily need to use heavy formatting or even lines to do that, but you should have clearly separated sections. Now, just know that when you do apply online and you upload your resume, typically the applicant tracking system boogers things up. So you'll have to go back in and copy and paste sections into probably each of the freeform text boxes in that system. Just prepare yourself in your mind that you're going to need to do that no matter what kind of resume you have. Let's see. Is it important to change your objective work summary each time? So, Christine, yes, you want to have a sales pitch. Not necessarily, I'm looking for this type of role. You literally, the formula is this. As the job description title, whatever that is, I will leverage the skills and expertise, ideally, that they're looking for to net an impact that they're probably looking for. So you literally are talking to the hiring manager as this person in this position. I will do this for you. Hire me, right? So you're giving them a reason why you are an ideal candidate right at the beginning of your resume. And that's very, very important for two reasons. One, it allows you to add the position title into your resume, which does help you with most applicant tracking systems. And it also gives you some additional places to put keywords, which from the job description, which is important. And it also meets certain federal requirements that nobody pays attention to, but basically states that you need to clearly indicate that you're actively seeking employment for those at that company. Nobody pays attention to that, but it's there. Let's see, no hyperlinks on resume, right? No active ones. Now you can have just the words, right? You can include the URL, but no active hyperlinks. So what else do we have? Let's talk about what gets real resume results. So we've already kind of segued into that a little bit, but the biggest thing that gets you resume results is relevancy, being relevant to the jobs you seek. Now, if you are building your resume or you're working on tweaking your resume to make sure it's optimized for the jobs you're looking for, I highly recommend that you go out, doesn't matter which job board, Google, LinkedIn, Indeed, doesn't matter. Pull down your ideal roles. So roles, when you look at them, you get that little spark inside of you that goes, oh yeah, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want to do. I would recommend 2 to 3 of those types of roles. It doesn't really matter where they are, probably wherever you're located geographically. So if you're overseas, you might want to keep it in the European market. If you're in the US, you probably want to keep it inside the continental US, but it doesn't have to be in your town or your city, right? So you can spread your net pretty broad, particularly if you have a relatively niche role type that you're looking for. So get those 2 to 3 examples that really light you up when you look at them. Take those and look at what they're asking for, okay? What are they asking for? What types of roles, responsibilities, tasks are they expecting you to do? And make sure that your resume clearly expresses your career contributions from that standpoint. That is called creating relevancy and optimizing your resume based on where you're headed, right? A lot of resumes are obituaries. It talks about what we've done, our past, and that's important. And we need to have it highly targeted on where we're going. So you want to start with the end in mind when it comes to creating your resume. That will help you tremendously, not only to get through applicant tracking systems, but also to be highly relevant to the recruiter because they want to see what they want to see right away, 5 to 6 seconds or less. And then for the hiring manager, that gives them real tangible examples of how you've been able to leverage your skills and expertise on the job based on what you're going for, based on the role that you want to be hired for, right? So it does a multiple of things. Oh, and by the way, it also helps prepare you for the interview. So doing this is powerful and extremely important. You must have your resume be relevant and you must clearly articulate your career contributions because it's easy to have a bullet list of roles and responsibilities, but if it looks like a job description, literally without any tangible examples of how you've applied your skills and expertise to a net positive outcome, this is important, you have to have impact, right? Then that doesn't help you stand out. It's a very competitive job search market right now, and you have to stand out. So you want to clearly express your career contributions. Let's see, why no active hyperlinks? Why no active hyperlinks is because some older applicant tracking systems don't handle that very well. The newer ones do, but we just really don't know when we're applying for a job online what version of ATS system they have, how old it is, have they bothered update it, and do they even know how to use it? So that's why. Let's see, Christine says, how would you target a resume if you want to help promote yourself for a remote position? Excellent question. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. Right in the header, you can say open or willing to relocate. Now there's a difference between the word open and willing. Open means they'll pay to relocate you. Willing means you will pay to relocate you. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. Be very wise of which one you say. Now, if you want to take that a step further, let's just say, Christine, you're looking to move to Denver because it's stinking hot in Texas or wherever, right? That's my thoughts right now. I know you're not in Texas, but that's my thought. So let's just say you want to move to Denver, Colorado, and you're seeking jobs specifically in that metro area. Well, you could, if you wanted to, create a Google Hangouts number for yourself, particularly right now that we are in a remote environment. No one's having in-person interviews anyway. It's all virtual. So who's the wiser? You can create a Google Hangouts number for that area code. And you might want to do that anyway. So let's just say you're perfectly happy staying in the city you're staying in, but you transported your number from elsewhere, another state, what have you. I'm hoping most ATS systems have fixed this, but in 2018, late in 2019, we noticed that if you had an out-of-area phone number, the ATS system might just archive your resume because it would clearly say that you were not living in that location. So that's very frustrating. If it may help to list the city and state that you live in if you want to stay in that city and state. But to answer your question, Christine, you can create a Google Hangouts number for free and have it be targeted to that area. Now, overseas, I'm not sure that exactly works, but I know in the continental US, that does work. So that will help you. And we're all having remote interviews anyway, so you could be anywhere, right? Let's see. Holly says, I've sent my email to many jobs. Why rejected or denied? It could be multiple reasons. It could be you're not meeting the job match criteria. It could mean that you're not relevant to those jobs. You don't have enough career contributions and enough clearly delineated accomplishments and statements to say that you are relevant for those roles, because that's very important. You could be overqualified for the roles you're seeking. There are a host of different reasons why you may be getting rejected. Now, if you're getting immediate rejection, that's probably there's something wrong in your resume that is triggering a red flag in the applicant tracking system and booting you out, okay? But if you're applying and you're not hearing anything, it might be because you haven't optimized your resume. And you have to optimize your resume for every single application. So that's another thing we need to keep in mind. When it comes to getting real results with your resume, we can't just have a resume and then just fire it off. The shotgun approach does not work. You have to customize, well, not completely, but you need to tailor your resume for every single application. Because if you, let's just say you have a select accomplishments area and you have a host of accomplishments you put in there that aren't super related to the job you're seeking, the recruiters aren't going to give you the time of day. So you need to make sure that your content, particularly the first half of the first page, is highly relevant to the job you're seeking. Now, the resumes I create, most of the resume remains static, and there's certain key areas that we target to make sure that we manage applicant tracking systems and information consumption at the recruiter level and help you stand out for the hiring manager. Okay, so Amin says, would you recommend functional resume over chronological one if the applicant is specialized in more than one area? One of the things that kind of jumps out to me is that your LinkedIn may trip you up, because we only get one LinkedIn profile and it needs to also be targeted. So while we're really talking about resumes for the purpose of this particular career coffee chat, your LinkedIn actually does need to be targeted as well. And if you're too broad or not as relevant to the resume, let's just say they get your resume, they go, oh, okay, and they go on LinkedIn, and some applicant tracking systems will do that automatically. You'll pull in your LinkedIn and connect it with the resume so the recruiter doesn't even have to look. They'll go to your profile and say, this isn't that similar. That's a red flag. So we need to make sure our LinkedIn is related to our resume. It doesn't have to be exact, but it does need to be related. So to answer your question, a functional resume, the problem with not having any chronological information in your resume is that it may send a red flag to people. So they may say, oh, he's trying to hide something, which we don't want to do. So you can do a combination, what I call a hybrid resume, that combines both functional and chronological. And you can just have a short summary of your chronological work history towards the back, and then really focus on your functional career contributions in the front. So hopefully that helps you. All right, so let's talk about what else. So clearly articulating your career contributions is huge when it comes to getting real results with your resume. Okay, and that's one of the biggest gaps I see in almost every single resume I've reviewed. And I reviewed hundreds and hundreds of resumes. And only 2 resumes out of all of the resumes I have seen clearly articulated their accomplishments. 2. That's it. So that will tell you how many people, and it doesn't matter where you are in your professional career. You could be just beginning your career, or you could be an executive. It's not easy to discuss our career contributions. And you may know this because you can probably look at someone else, a friend or a colleague, and go, oh yeah, you're great at this or that or the other. When the tables are turned on ourselves, we're like, I don't know. So leverage your target roles. Like I mentioned before, go out, find your ideal roles. It's an example of those, and leverage those to help you flesh out and frame your career contributions, because it's very difficult to pull that out of ourselves because we've lived and breathed our career history. And sometimes it gets buried in a part of being, right? So we need some help to discuss our career contributions and how we've made a positive impact with the companies we work for and with. You can leverage your ideal roles, so those target job descriptions, to help you do that by looking at each one of the bullet points and saying, have I done that? Yes, no. Do I have a career contribution? So an example of how I've leveraged my expertise, my skills, my abilities to a net positive outcome. Now, just know that if you can't quantify, it doesn't mean your contribution doesn't matter, okay? It still matters. But if you can quantify, please do so. Not everyone was privy to the dollars and cents, and you would also be surprised how much you can quantify. Just keep this in mind. If you're applying for an internal company position, your numbers and figures need to be spot on. However, if you are applying for an external role, it can be an estimate. You don't have to be exact to the dollars and cents, okay? Your network will not remember all the things, okay? So when you're discussing with your network what type of opportunities you want, we have to be specific. Make sense? So if you're looking for a, program manager role, we need to be specific what type of program manager role, and be succinct. People just cannot remember. We've got so much going on in our brains and our minds. It's just too much to ask. So we need to be very specific when we're reaching out to our network, like you've just mentioned, and clearly articulating what types of roles you're seeking. That helps them help you, and it works. Trust me. I just, in fact, had an email last night, a great example. One of my clients just landed a great new job. Actually, it was funny. She got officially laid off. She was on furlough. She got officially laid off and accepted a new position the same day. So, woohoo! I'm really excited for her. But she was able to do that because she could clearly articulate what she was looking for to her network, and her network went to work for her. So just keep that in mind. Let's see. Cindy asked, is it recommended to update your LinkedIn header to reflect that you are furloughed or unemployed and seeking work? Ooh. So logically, that shouldn't matter, right? However, human beings are not logical creatures. We're driven by emotion and bias. And there still is, unfortunately, a bias against those people who are in transition. So be cautious about saying seeking or using words to those effect, or using the open to work feature that's on LinkedIn. While I think it's great, I'm also very uncertain about it based on what I know with behavioral science and how people, are totally unconscious to their biases, totally unconscious, and it drives us unconsciously to make decisions that we're just quite simply, it's all autopilot. We don't think about it. So when someone sees the word seeking, for some people, not all people, but some people, that denotes desperate, and that's not what we want. I would rather you spend that time in your headline because it's valuable real estate. It's almost like a billboard advertising you. So I'd rather you leverage that space in your LinkedIn headline to talk about what you're great at and what types of roles you're looking for and what your core expertise is and what you'll deliver. So it's like a billboard advertising you. So if you were to state to the hiring manager why you're a great candidate, what would you say, right? So that's what I would recommend having in your LinkedIn headline. Anish says, how do you showcase transferable skills? In current times, quite hard to get back in the same industry. Yeah, I understand. There's a lot of industries that are dying on the vine right now, either due to the socioeconomic crisis or due to other external factors. So transferable skills, leverage that process I mentioned earlier, finding your target positions. 2 to 3 examples are great. Doesn't really matter geographically where, long as those roles are something that lights your spark and you're like, oh yeah, I really want to do that. Leverage that to help you frame your transferable skills. Another really important reason you want to do it this way is that way you are talking the language of those who are hiring. Particularly if you are technically an expert in your field, you probably know what it takes to do the job, and you probably read job descriptions and go, that's not even close to what I actually do. And you're probably right. And it doesn't matter. You still need to be relevant to that job description, even if you know better. So leverage your job descriptions to help you frame your transferable skills and frame your skills in general, because we need to be able to speak the language of those people who are looking for ideal candidates. Make sense? All right. So if you see a job you're interested in, wouldn't it be better to find a person to send your resume to rather than apply online? Do both if you can. Just be aware of the company. Take, for example, some companies, like the larger companies, Halliburton was one of them, certainly. If you reach out directly to a hiring manager and the HR, talent acquisition department finds out, they will blacklist you. So be cautious about that. Also know that some people just simply can't go around the system like they used to be able to. You may still have to apply anyway. So do both. Reach out to your network and apply online. Because when it comes to job seeking, there's 3 very important avenues you need to take. Number 1 is applying online, leveraging your resume, making an application tracking system friendly, etc., making sure it clearly expresses your career contributions, all that. So the resume is a big one. The second way is your LinkedIn profile. You want your LinkedIn profile to work for you, right, based on the roles you're seeking. This is very important. And your LinkedIn profile can house a lot more information than your resume can. You definitely want to leverage that. And you want to be active on LinkedIn as well. Not just liking, I mean active, engaging, sharing relevant content, etc. Then the third one is networking. Now, this isn't a session to talk about networking, and there will be one coming up. I will say this, that networking, if you have let your network go cold until you need to find a job, it will take a while. Okay? Be patient. It takes time for the network to start to produce results. And that depends on how well you are connected to your network and how much of a network you have. So if you are just starting to build your network or you're just starting to reinvest in your network, just know it will take time. Do not expect your network to just go poof and produce results. Networking is a long-term game. And ideally, you want to be networking and investing in your network and spending energy with your network all the time, whether you're gainfully employed or not. Because if you want to see career results, career growth, you must network strategically. That is not optional, okay? And if you wait until you want to find a job, that's not too late. Just know that it will take a while for it to net results. So those are the 3 different areas you really need to focus on when it comes to getting real results with your job search in general. So let's see what other questions. So some tough questions, and I'll wrap this up. So if you do have any more questions, feel free to reach out, put it in the chat. If you have any questions about tough questions, which I'm going over on a few, anything about resume formatting, etc., or anything else you have about the resume field, and I will get back to you. So tough questions, job history gaps. Ooh, that's so tough. Some people want to cover it up. Okay, well, I don't recommend that. I recommend you clearing assumptions. Because here's the wonderful thing about the human brain. If we don't have the information that tells us whatever that is, we will make an assumption. Do you want people to make assumptions about your career gap? I think not. We want to tell them why we have a career gap, particularly right now, for example. A lot of people have been let go due to downsizing and socioeconomic stress. So stay that. Victim of downsizing due to socioeconomic stress, company closing, whatever. It is normal. It happens. Now, let's say that you are thinking about re-entering the workforce because you took a leave of absence. Be clear on what that leave of absence was for. The only caution I'll have about that is if it was for a personal health reason, I would not call attention to that. And it's sad that I have to say this, but again, bias. Employers have health insurance and they don't want to cover someone who's a risk. So I hate even saying that. It makes me so mad, but it's true, okay? And I want to arm you with the right information. So if you did leave due to a health issue of your own, you may want to say left to take care of, family members. People only know what you tell them, okay? Which brings me to my next point. If you were let go, not laid off, let go, okay? Some companies are doing this right now quite a bit, and it's making me very angry because they don't want to give people any severance pay. And they're letting people go without giving them any reason, as if they were firing them. But they're really just laying people off. And it's because they're in economic stress and they don't want to give people any sort of severance. It's horrible, and it is happening, and it makes me very angry. So anyway, moving on. So how do we handle this if we've been let go from the job? Remember this. You need to protect your future, and people only know what you tell them. Make sense? So you can say, downsized, laid off, right? What if they call the company? Okay, well, if they call the company, the only thing they are legally allowed to say is that you worked there from that date to that date, and that is it. If they say anything else, they're liable for a lawsuit. So keep that in mind. People only know what you tell them. And also, please don't call attention to it on your own. If someone asks about it, you can answer it very succinctly, effectively, and shortly, and that is it. You do not have to make a story about it. You don't have to make excuses about it. You don't have to talk about it. Answer it straight, let it go. Because a lot of people, we hold a lot of emotion about these things, and that tends to make us verbose when we don't want to be verbose about it. We do want to call it, we want to clear assumptions. So if you have room in your resume, you can say, downsize due to economic distress. You can say, let this company to go to the next company. You can say those things, and recruiters actually do appreciate that, by the way. But only if you have room. If you don't have room, then don't put it in there. But if you have a gap, I do highly recommend you clear assumptions, okay? So we don't want to try to cover it up or hide it, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. Life happens. So what other questions do we have? Any suggestions on hashtags? Not in your resume, no. Hashtags are great for social platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, but I don't recommend putting any hashtags in your resume. You can certainly use keywords, based on the job description, that sort of thing, but you don't need to use a hashtag. So let's see, what's the minimum period for a career gap? 1 month of unemployment. So here's an interesting feature. It takes around 3 months for the IRS to do its red tape and, for when they do a background check for it to be reported that you're no longer receiving a W-2 from that company, okay? So you have around about a 3-month leeway before you need to say that I am no longer with this company, okay? Hopefully that helps you. Any more than that, you need to come up with something. Now, here's a good one. I notice a lot of people, and I've recommended this as well in the past, set themselves up as consulting agents. Well, unless you're actually doing consulting and you have projects and career contributions based on said consulting, I don't necessarily recommend that. And you can use things like volunteer work. So if you volunteer a significant portion of your time, or any portion of your time, you can put that in as your current position. Just avoid having that gap on LinkedIn. For your resume, you do need to have a stop period after that 3-month window has passed. So hopefully that helps you. Hashtags on LinkedIn are great. Just know that you don't want to do more than 4, and they need to be relevant to whatever that you are doing. You don't want to put more than 4 hashtags on a LinkedIn post or anything you share, because it looks kind of spammy, and LinkedIn algorithms actually rate your post down and you won't get as much traction. Now, that doesn't always happen. If you have tagged a whole bunch of people, which I'll get back to in a moment, if you tagged a whole bunch of people, that may or may not be the case. And if you tagged a whole bunch of people, just be aware that some of those people may not appreciate you tagging them, okay? Because how that works, and again, we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on LinkedIn, but how that works is when you tag someone, you're leveraging not only your network, but their network as well. So you're spreading kind of the view of how many people can see that post, which is smart when used wisely, but don't leverage it all the time, okay? Don't wear that out. So hopefully this helps you. It's been a lot of fun talking to you about how to get real results with your resume. I have 2 resources for you in this description of this event. One of those resources is 50% off of my Career Makeover Mastery course, which I am really excited about. It is amazing, and it's not just because I made it. Okay, that's based on the comments and the recommendations I've got so far on that course. It's all about your resume. And I've also included how to navigate the job search and optimize your resume for every single application to make sure you get seen and get traction in this highly competitive job search market. So that is available in the event description. And also available in the event description are some other fun resources for you as well. I have a new podcast. So Career Coffee Chat podcast is now live. Woohoo! Yay! So I'm really excited about that. So feel free to check that out if you like podcasts. And next week, I will have an interview with Larry Levine, and we'll be talking about how to increase your sales influence. Now, this is not just for salespeople. This is for anyone, because as you know, we're all selling. So how to increase your influence, and particularly from a sales standpoint. So it's been a pleasure. For those of you who have never seen my smiling face before, my name is Erin Urban, or Coach E. Urban. I'm a certified career strategist and executive coach, helping people remove career roadblocks to achieve more influence, impact, and income. And it's been a pleasure. And thank you for tuning in to Career Coffee Chat. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com, or tweet at Coach E. Urban, Instagram, coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.